Hello, welcome back. This is my WPL B24. Though this truck's 2 years old and I've stolen the back body and the spare tyre assembly for other projects, it's effectively brand new. It's only actually been driven once, which was enough for me to discover that it was absolutely hopeless with this 130 motor. I'll show you what I mean. I found a little patch of 1/16 scale sand dunes. Let's see how the B24 does on the soft sand. Well, it does very well when we're only asking it to go downhill. Let's see what it's like on a slight upward slope. B24 in soft sand, uphill. Oh dear. This is with a brand new, fully charged battery. Oh dear, I made the mistake of steering. That's it. Okay, let's try the Fay on the same slope. When planning this test, I assumed that we were dealing with two very similar products, and that the only real significant difference between the two was the fact that the Fay FY001 is fitted with tracks. Rather than testing their ability to find traction, which is what I was hoping to do, we've inadvertently tested the motor's torque outputs, and the Fay's motor is so much better than the B1 and B24's motors that the B24 just runs out of torque long before it runs out of traction. So I think the first order of business is to swap that 130 for a 180. So here it is with the 180 motor fitted. WPL had actually gauged the lengths of the wires so accurately that the greater length of the can meant that I actually had to extend them. The joints are soldered, but I don't have any heat shrink. Let's have a look at the body I've got for it. The Ford Model Y. This will be the first time I've used a Kamtec Model Y body without cutting it up. Actually, it has to be the Model Y because it's noticeably narrower than most of Kamtec's other bodies, and this is a very narrow chassis. I've cut out the windows and the radiator aperture on this body, and as you can see, the width is absolutely gorgeous. There is one problem, however, and that is simply that this body is rather too short for this chassis. I could simply cut off the overhang, but I've had a different idea. In order to extend this body, the first job is to make it a bit more pliable by heating it. So I just pop it in the oven on gas mark 4 for about 20 minutes. A lot of time these viral videos turn out not to be true, but let's see if this technique really does work. I don't think this truck has enough traction. Let's try something bigger. This isn't bigger, but it's a lot torquier and a lot grippier. So let's see if this can do it. I think that's about long enough. Let's try that. Let's check the length. Oh, that's spot on. If I ever use this technique again, I'll stretch a measuring tape behind the body so I know when to drop the throttle on the tow car that's stretching the body. Still, this is ready to continue. I've made up some mounts for my newly stretched body. Using my newly developed lockdown technique of drilling 4 holes in each piece and passing 2 cable ties through. Then I just drill mounting holes in the body, and in order to give the screws that pass through the holes in the body something to bite into, I add a small block of hardwood. This is beech. Having test fitted the body, I discovered that I did need to relieve the arches to allow for the small amount of flex that we get from these leaf springs. This rear window aperture is quite long. I'm thinking of putting a C-pillar in about here. Here's the left-hand C-pillar, and this is the one on the right. At this stage it's time to start thinking about things like a floor for the vehicle and seats. But before I do that, I think I'm going to paint the chassis rusty, dark, browny colours, and while I'm at it I may as well do the same for the fuel tanks and wheels. Good. Now I can carry on. This vehicle now has a floor filled in the windows with mesh, and I've made a simple dash. Here's the dash now that I've finished it, including painting these 3 switches black. I've also given the body a coat of paint. It's come out a little shinier than I'd hoped, but I can soon dull that down with some very fine wet or dry sandpaper. And once the dash is glued in place, we'll be looking at seat, driver, steering wheel and headlamps. Here we have the driver fixed to his seat and holding the steering wheel. The body's back on, and there's the driver with his steering wheel. Perhaps that's a better view. Sadly, the small stationer's shop which used to supply the marker pens I used to use to make headlights didn't survive lockdown, so I've had to use a different shape which is pointier and not so much to my taste. With the LED fed through the hole in the side of the headlight, the light itself can just be glued to the side of the radiator cowl. I've just glued this one on and I'm waiting for the glue to dry. The last thing I had to fit to this were the door handles. With that done, I was just about to declare it finished when I discovered that only one LED is working. Other than that, it's ready to go to the wasteland. I think I've just broken it. No rear wheel drive. And sure enough, it turned out that yes, I had broken it. Investigation at home revealed that the differential input shaft's pinion had come off the end of the shaft. After a lightning journey home and the swiftest ever rear axle swap, our trusty vehicle is ready to try again, perhaps avoiding soft sand this time.
camera going off over there, yeah?
Yeah, just as easy as possible for it. Okay, stop. Can't do it. Well, I'm happy to admit that the exploding back axle was entirely my fault, but you just saw with your own eyes. My wife certainly wasn't abusing the car in any way, she was just driving it along. This time the noise is coming from the gearbox. So guys, I need your advice. Pascal, Phil, anyone else? What do I buy to make this reliable? What's the cheapest setup I can go for to sort this out? For example, is it possible to buy a set of metal gears to fit in the existing gearbox casing? I do know that I don't want to use the WPL 2-speed gearbox because I don't want to have to change radio transmitters. If I get metal axle internals, do I need metal drive shafts to couple up to them? One thing I do know is that I'm determined to get this thing running properly and shoot my wasteland video. So, for now, thanks for watching.